Welcome to Nkositalkshows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled within.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
Good afternoon. My name is Nkositalkshows. I'm the founder of Hope Spring Eternally Introduction Agency and the founder of Nkositalkshows. So today I have Tamia with me. I'm going to let Tamia introduce herself so she can also lay out her credentials, expertise. Over to you, Tamia, please. Good morning. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Good morning, Nomsa. I'm very excited that you chose this topic for today. And I was super excited for you to introduce me as the featured speaker on the topic of human and sex trafficking. Did you receive my bio?
Yes, I did. I did receive your bio, but I would like you to tell the audience who you are, please. And
well, hello. I'm tamiadow, and I actually speak internationally on human and sex trafficking. My bio is quite long and extensive that lays out who I am having to do with sex trafficking. I am educated in the area of criminal justice. I actually am a retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detective. And I, as I mentioned, speak around the world educating people on human and sex trafficking. So that is who I am.
Thank you so much. Tamia. Basically, you have been doing this for a long time. And you have a bachelor degree in criminal justice, and you are a retired police woman, from police department, domestic violence. Wow, I'm getting scared. A detective. I'm getting scared, Tamia. Oh my goodness, trafficking, domestic violence, threat assessment, stalking, and professional safety for women and children. I'm actually getting scared now. So, but
well, you shouldn't get scared. You should feel. I see. You shouldn't get scared. You should feel fairly confident to know that you have someone who has that background and that expertise. I feel really blessed to have had training in that area and actually be able now to share what I've learned with your audience.
I know women trafficking, I think, is a subject that we all avoid, and it does exist in reality. And basically, I hope today you're gonna, because for me, I know about human trafficking, but I don't know anything about it. I hear people talk, I hear on the news. So it would be nice to actually, if we can hear from you, for somebody who's been there, who has dealt with the situation. I know on Saturday when I was talking to you, and you were a bit stressed because you were helping somebody who was going through that problem. And basically, I have to say that what you guys do is amazing. Is really amazing, because women trafficking and drugs, it does exist. So if you can tell our audience, Tamia, the facts about the trafficking of women and girls, because the people would like to know. So if you can explain to us the facts that is going on around the world and the things that we don't get to see, please.
Right. So right now, sex trafficking in the world literally is the #1 criminal enterprise behind drugs and weapons trafficking. And that is very, if you think about it's very eye-opening. It really is. There are more people in modern day slavery, which is what sex and human trafficking is called, modern day slavery. And I will define it for you. I'll give you this is kind of a generic description, but I want to make sure everybody understands what I'm talking about when I say human and sex trafficking. So it's any adult who is made to engage in a commercial sex act. So an exchange of anything of value to any person, whether it's a sex act or we're going to talk about labor trafficking also, by any means of force, fraud, or coercion. So force, fraud, or coercion is what we look at. And then any minor child that is caused to engage in commercial sex acts or forced labor is considered to be human trafficked, because children don't have a say to say, yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't want to do this, because in most countries, there is an age of consent. And the age of consent is past childhood. So if a child is being forced into trafficking, any way, shape, or form, whether it's human or sex trafficking, let me give you some ideas of difference between human and sex trafficking, because what I want you to do is understand as we talk throughout this hour together, when I mention something, whether I say sex or human, or I just say trafficking, realize that I'm talking about the core of the both, okay? Sometimes when I mention sex, the things that happen in sex trafficking aren't necessarily what happened in human. But the whole goal of today is to help people be able to understand what it is, recognize when they see it, look for resources to help if they know someone who may be it. Because in your own council area, or in your own neighborhood, there may be someone who, after I give you a description of what it looks like to be the victim of trafficking, you may realize that there's somebody there who you need to notify the police and let people know that this young woman, could be a young man, could be a little, children that are being forced to engage in sex acts or forced to do labor for free as a human victim of slavery, as a literal slavery victim. And with you guys are in the UK, this happens all over the world. Here in the US, it happens. People get invited over here, transported over here, and then they lose their freedoms. This is why we call it modern day slavery, because they are owned by someone who is trafficking them and gaining money off of their services and what this person is doing, and that person has no freedoms. So we'll talk about a little bit more about that a little later. But when you talk about labor trafficking, depending on the country that you live in.
Hold on. I need to understand more. When you say there's lots of people that come to, obviously it's around the world. So where do they actually, the children or women, where do they get exposed to all these trafficking? Is it on a website, or is there any particular places where people can be aware of? So I didn't want you to move on. I want you to stay here.
Okay, so I'm not technically moving on. I'm still in the definition stage, so people can understand what I'm talking about. So I start with definition, and then I start with how you can see it, how you will know it, because there is no one place that a person is trafficked from. So I want to make sure that you guys understand the labor and the sex trafficking and how it's different. And then I want you to see how you would be able to recognize and see these people, because they are amongst you. So there's not just one place that people can be trafficked from. It's not like movies, okay? You see on the movie one time a girl is snatched and this is how it happens. That's not the only way that human trafficking happens. It happens in your neighborhood. And like I said, I will talk about that in a minute. But please let me finish with the definition so people understand what I'm talking about. So we have labor trafficking. Now, labor trafficking means people doing physical work where they are engaging in that physical work and they're not receiving compensation, or maybe they're receiving very little compensation to keep them indebted to the trafficker. Okay, so we have agricultural situations. So let's say you live in a community, because what's so cool about your show, Nomsa, is that you have so many people from different countries and things like that. So this is why I want them to see different forms of trafficking, so they won't go, oh no, that's not happening here, because people are being forced labor in pretty much every country. It might be rurally and you may not see it at your door, yet it's happening. Okay, so agriculture would be like picking fruits, or, some kind of physical labor like that, where you might see a lot of people who seem to be immigrants, people not from your given country, that are forced to come in and do it. Then you have debt servitude. Similar to that, maybe you have someone who they were told to pay to come, then they had to turn around and work off their debt, yet they never work off their debt because of the fact that the debt is so high, and they keep accruing debt. So an example of that would be if someone came to the country and maybe they paid $10,000 to come to your country, whatever the dollar amounts are there. When they arrive, the trafficker will give them a place to stay. It's usually not the best accommodations, but it's a place to stay and food, and a place to sleep, right? And then the trafficker will say, well, every month that you're here with me, that's $1,000 you owe me. So before you know it, now that person's upside down and they continue to have to work. And this is why they call it modern day slavery, because the person never gets out from underneath what they owe the trafficker. Could be years before they ever even get close. And then they keep accruing debt. So it's called debt servitude. Domestic servitude, same type of concept. They may be working in a household or working at a hotel, and you may go to a hotel and realize that the maid or some of those service workers in the kitchen, they seem to have something about them that doesn't make sense. And I'll tell you a story about how I experienced that in one of the Arab countries during my traveling. We also have, restaurant workers can be servitude, factory workers, and construction workers a lot of times if you have that industry there. So it'd be something for you to be mindful. It might not be something that you would run out and see labor trafficking per se, but it does happen. Now, sex trafficking is something that may be happening before your eyes and you're not paying attention. And I'm not being mean to anyone, because if it's not for you to pay attention to, you don't. Until you don't see it. But once we talk about it today, then you will see it, and then you will kind of know what's going on with this girl across the walkway, or these children who never go to school, which now, nightmare, you guys, when I talk about this a little bit later, is this access to children right now, what's kids being online for school, is literally a nightmare. And it is a haven for predators and traffickers, okay? So sex trafficking, when we talk about that, now I just talked about labor or human trafficking, because both of them fall under the same umbrella. Sex trafficking is when you're looking at a street prostitute that's out there on the corner. And a lot of times in our minds, we write them off that that's what they're doing by choice, but we don't realize that many of them have handlers, they have pimps, they have traffickers. They are forced by fraud or coercion to be out there selling themselves every night. And it's not like they're going home and putting that in their nest egg. Unfortunately, they're going back and turning it in. And when they're not turning it in, a lot of times they are beaten, and some of them end up dead because they don't meet what is given to them as a quota. So they are being trafficked. Also, people who live in brothels or work in brothels, depending on what country you live in. Some brothels, some women will say they're there by choice. Other brothels actually have trafficking victims inside of there. So they really don't, those people who were there are not there of their free will. They're under those three things that I just mentioned. They're there under force, they're there under fraud, they're there under coercion. And then you have massage parlors, some of those pornography films that you guys are watching that you think, oh, surely this woman and these men, they're having, they're having a good time. Really watch, you guys. I think if you really look at the faces of some of these people, you realize either they're drugged or something is going on that they're doing, they're disassociating because they're being forced to perform those sex acts. So those are just a few that I'm sharing with you. But like I was mentioning to you, Nomsa, I really want to make sure that everybody gets in their head what, when I say sex trafficking and human trafficking, what I'm saying and what I mean. Because that's the other thing is most people like you, you were sharing, which I appreciate, they don't really know what the definition of it is. They don't really know, why do people stay in their mind? Like, why do people stay? And they have to realize that there's force involved, or they're holding something over their head, or there's coercion. So that's just kind of the opening on what is sex trafficking, what constitutes sex trafficking, and how you might see it in your community.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is very, very interesting, because it shows that even in my neighborhood, if it could be happening, but because I don't have experience and not being aware, things might be happening. So how do you actually look out for the situation in your neighborhood? Is there any signs that you can see as neighbors, or they just look normal?
Well, they definitely don't look normal, but they look normal to the person who is not concerned. And what I mean by that is, when we are so focused on what we are doing, what's going on in our lives, and not really paying attention to our fellow humans, then they just look normal because everybody's just a blur to you, right? So what I would encourage people to do when you start looking for people who are possibly being forced or coerced or being by fraud caused to be in a situation against their will, is one of the main keys is usually either they're always with someone or someone's always watching. They usually have their heads down. They're not someone who will engage in eye contact with a regular person, like just me and you walking down the street. Most normal people, depending on what country you're from, in America, we look each other in the eye. We have no problem with that. I know there's some countries that, people will divert from, like, I visited the UK many times. I love London. It's one of my favorite places. Yet I know that during commuting time, when people are coming and going, people are so fixed and focused on where they're going that they won't look you in the eye, literally, because here I am, the American, coming and I'm looking everybody in the eye wanting to greet them. But people are so focused and they don't want to, because you guys are so polite, should I say, you don't want to intrude on anybody else's personal space, so you just look away. You don't, you don't engage in that eye contact, which we are so used to in the US, except for like New York City. I love you guys in New York City, but you guys have the London mindset too. Let me get on about my business, right? Well, the thing is, there's victims amongst us. There's people who really need us to look at them. They really need us to see them. And what their trafficker teaches them to do is to be unseen. They teach them to be unseen until it's time for them to do whatever act it is that they have them out there and trafficking them for. So if the person is, let's say, a working girl, there's different terms they have for the street workers, different girl, that kind of stuff, then they're not going to engage in eye contact except for those people who their trafficker has taught them to engage with, right? And the time of day too. You may not see one out on your way to work, yet when you're on your way back home, which is now into the evening, you may see the working girls out there. And they are actually trying to find the man or the woman, who they're going to offer themselves to. And they know very well how to do it, because their thing is, if they don't turn in their quota, I think I've said it one time to you guys before, quota, which means the trafficker says, at the end of the night, you better come in with 1,000 pounds. If you don't walk in the store with 1,000 pounds, you better not come through the door. And so that's why you'll see some people, and I'll say you'll see because most of you probably won't, but you'll see somebody maybe out there at maybe 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning because they haven't made their quota. So they cannot go back in, and they may still be there at 4 o'clock in the morning because they're only at 920 pounds and they can't show up 80 pounds short, you know. What is also sad and interesting about that situation, and here's the thing, I gave you a long list of different people who could be considered trafficking, but today we're going to focus on sex trafficking and the things that you may see, okay? And then we'll also talk about children and the access to children. But what that young person does, and when I say young person, even though you look at this person who's a prostitute and they may be in their 20s, realize that they got introduced into that probably when they were younger, and their mindset, and with beating and, you know, all of the things that traffickers use to control these young ladies and boys, with mindset that they, even though they're in the wide open, they feel like they're in a cage. And they know that they can only do so much, right? So they're not even going to really have a conversation with, which a lot of these there's a lot of rescue places out there that will go and try to rescue people that are victims of sex trafficking, things such as that. And when they get them alone, they're like, okay, I need to ask you, you know, are you being trafficked? Are you this? Are you that? These young people of time, they know that their trafficker, because they're always being watched, okay? There's always a handler, there's always someone watching them. So if they go to do a service, an act with someone, there's usually a designated place for them to go, and they have a certain amount of time to do it, and someone's watching them. So they're keeping an eye on that spot. So let me give you an example. Let's say it's something so simple as they use an alley. Now, in the UK, you guys are in London, I'm going to say London specifically, you guys have CCTV. So it's not like they can really go to some remote place in public and maybe perform a sex act. So they may, you know, jump in the person's car and go somewhere and that kind of thing. But the whole thing is the handler must have control. So generally they have a spot, and it might be somewhere near. It could be in your council housing, literally, where you see. So this is a tip on how to open your eyes and see what's going on, where you see different people coming and going. Maybe you see a house that you don't really know who lives in the house, but you just see a lot of people coming and going from that house. Or the one person who's supposed to be assigned to that house, you guys know him or her, because traffickers can be male or female. Traffickers can be from any country, right? So when I talk about London,
you know what you just said. I saw a job advertising in the United Kingdom. Someone was advertising a job. This. So I applied for that job. So then I went to London to go in for interview. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking for an office. So I started looking for an office. And I gave them a call, these girls, and I was like, I can't find an office. All I can see is private houses. So then they said, yeah, that is the right number. So I was like, okay. So I went there, and this girl, they came out. She came out. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna come in because this is a private house. I'm coming for a job interview. And she was like, yes, you're right. It's a job interview. And it was a prostitution. And she was like, we are looking for somebody to serve in this house. And I was like, but I came all the way 2 hours, and you advertised as an employment, and I'm here now. So you are telling me that this is what you are advertising. And at the time I didn't see anything about it. I just walked away, and I was really, really upset. I walked away. And then on Facebook, this girl or a guy, I don't know whether it's a man and a woman, they're advertising as a modeling. It's a modeling company. So this guy, he actually sent me a message, or a woman private, and saying we are looking for girls for modeling to take them. I don't know whether it was Spain or a different country. And he said, I think it was like £2,000 per week, or or 500 pounds. I can't remember, but it was a lot of money. And then I said to him, what kind of a modeling job is that? Because he says he's looking for girls. He's actually even in the group with the modeling agencies where musicians and modeling agencies. So then I was like, yes, what kind of a job? It sounds very interesting. And then he was like, but we are looking for girls to sleep with dogs. And I was like, what now? Yes.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know what? That is clever what you added, because that is a way that they will reach out and find people through advertisements. In the US, we have different kind of places that they advertise to. But yeah, they'll ask for actresses, they'll ask for models. You know, they'll tell people they have this great opportunity for them, please come out. And I love what you said, because you just pointed out some things that are very key. We must always be mindful, and they're playing on the fact that they believe that you won't be, that people will be so after that money figure, right? That, oh, come and you're going to, earn 2,000 pounds a month or a week or whatever you said, right? And actually you're going to be turning around making them 2,000 pounds or more a week, because had you have stepped in this house, and I want our viewers to really, and our listeners to really hear what you said, because had you have stepped inside that house, you would have been out of the public view. You would have possibly been drugged, but some kind of way you may have been forced. Your family would not have seen you again, until maybe that, they came looking for you or whatever, because, hey, mom's gone and this kind of thing. But people, it happens. It literally happens to people. And I like that you told that story, because here's the thing. Everybody's envisioning taken. The way that somebody gets snatched is somebody comes and grabs them and runs off with them. But that's not true. Remember I said by fraud? So you just gave a perfect example of fraud, of them saying, come, we have this great film shoot that we're going to do, and we're going to do this.
They're advertising on Facebook as the modeling film shoot. What else is the cruise, the waitresses on the cruise. But then when you actually speak to them, because I didn't speak to them, I'm on the group for musicians and modeling group. So he actually approached me. I think he saw me on my profile. So I basically, I knew that something was fishy. So I had to keep the conversation going. And then he was like, we're actually looking for girls to actually, you get loads of money. We have dogs. You can sleep with the dogs or humans, whatever you want. We created films for that. And I was like, what now? And basically, but then when I look at the profile, it says modeling is a modeling agency. The profile is being put as a modeling agency. So if somebody is really, really desperate for that job, so they will end up being involved in that trafficking.
Yes. Yeah, and you bring up a very good point, because that is one of the ways that they do get people, especially with the, like you said, go on the cruise ship or go to another country. Because this is why I'm saying to people that this happens in every country, meaning that trafficking is happening in every country, and to include. So let's talk about the young people, the children. Okay, so you said something really cool. I want to say, to help move the conversation forward, as you said, you saw this on the internet. Okay, we're not going to name any particular type of group that you may have been in, but just on the internet or on some type of social media, and you see an advertisement, right? Well, now you have young people now who are on the computer, literally, depending on where you live at. Some of the countries are open. Thank God you guys are open and the children can go back to school. But quite a few of the countries still have children at home on their computers, okay? And when they're on their computers, they're interacting with their classmates as it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, these computers are being infiltrated. These hackers that are traffickers know how to get in, and they get into these young people's computers. And what they do is portray themselves as a child, just like them, right? And so they start this engagement with your child. They find out, oh, you're 13. Oh, I'm 13. You live where? Oh, I live near there, and blah, 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 right? So now we see this, even we as adults, we engage in conversations with people who seem to have similar interests and likes as we do. So as these children are playing these games, they have another player that's on the game, and usually it is someone who's their age, but these traffickers know what to say and what to do. Now, the thing that I do now, so I'm retired and I do the speaking engagements, such as this, to make people aware about sex and human trafficking and domestic violence. But I also make films. Okay, so filmmaker is what I do now that I really enjoy doing. And I made a film actually specifically for children and their families that was called Meet Me After School. And it went behind that whole thing right there, because in the story Meet Me After School, the predator has every design on this child and is prepared to actually snatch that child and force that child into sex acts, right? But of course, the police stop them in my story. But it gives the listener, the viewer, the parents that are watching, and the children to realize that when you're communicating with somebody online, they're not always who they appear to be. And even for some of the people who are listening right now, I want you to be super careful about someone who reaches out to you and says, like Nomsa was saying, I saw your profile picture. You're really cute. I'd like to get to know you. Okay. That's a red flag, people. I know that we're locked up. A lot of us are stuck at home, and we'd love to have a friend to engage with. And unfortunately, because of that, I call it the Lonely Hearts Club. These predators know that. And they know that they can get into you, right? And they're going to get money out of you one way or another. And let me tell you how, okay? Either they invite you to come to where they are, where you could end up trafficked or anything such as that, because a lot of times you'll find out you never have a face-to-face engagement with this person. You communicate through texts, or you may possibly have a phone call with them, but it's usually very rare, because they always tell you there's something wrong with the network, or they're somewhere remote where they can't get online, and they can't really show you a video of themselves because of this, that, and the other, right? But they'll send you that picture of whoever this person whose identity they have stolen. And I say that because, trust me, you don't want to come on the social media page of a retired police officer like myself, because I go into it right away, right? Soon as you start engaging me with that, oh, you're so pretty, I've been following your profile, blah, 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 blah. I immediately go to, oh, great, let's do an in real life conversation. Let's have a video immediately. And once they start telling me all this stuff, I'm like, delete, report, delete, because what they do is they go and steal a profile of a very nice looking man, because we're women, or a very, big boob, scantily clad woman for men. And they'll start this conversation with you. So, oh, you look really good. The stuff they have with the conversations they have with the men usually go sexual very quickly, because the man saw this scantily clad woman. So needless to say, his eyes, the lust of the eyes has already affected him. And then before you know it, this woman needs money. This woman, wants you to this and that and the other. And now you're sucked in. We've seen people lose thousands of dollars to scammers that they never met, and when we ask them the basic questions like, did you ever see the person's face? If you ever had a conversation with them, a telephonic conversation where you could hear their voice, and they'd be like, no, we just, we're in love, and we just, communicated by text and all this kind of stuff. So please, listeners and viewers, hear me when I say that. If it looks and sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And people are making millions of dollars off of scamming other people because of the Lonely Hearts Club. Now, that's also what causes the demand for these women and young people who are working on the streets, being forced to work on the streets, because at home, that purchaser, that buyer, that person who comes and causes the demand now is unfortunately always going to be there, even during a pandemic. You would think it's pandemic, everything's locked down. How in the world could somebody go out and get some we call it, it's American term, some strange on the side. And what strange is basically sex. You go out and get some type of, maybe, I won't describe it, but there's things, we may have a mixed audience, but when I say sexual activity, you know what I mean. Okay. So they'll go out and buy these young ladies or these girls or these people who are being forced to be out there. And trust me, the men find out, the ones who are looking for it. It's just like drugs, you guys. Like I told you, it's part of criminal enterprise. The 3 top criminal enterprises: drugs, sex trafficking, and weapons trafficking. So yeah. People will find a way to do it. And yes, it is still going on. So let me go back, Nomsa, to helping people find out or pay attention to if it's happening in their neighborhood. Here's a way to pay attention to it. In those houses that I described, remember how I described the house where you might possibly know the man or you might know the woman who owns the house, right? Who is the person that's legally, to that house. Because most of you guys, when I was in London and also even little rural, you still know your neighbors. You know your neighbors to the left and to the right. And you kind of see them when you come home from work and that kind of stuff, right? What you will start to see is, like I said, a lot of traffic to the door. Different people to the door. Maybe you see one of the persons from the house leading different people to the door. Or maybe you see just the fact that a lot of people keep coming to that door and they don't stay long. They may go in and then come back out, within, 20 minutes to an hour, and then there's another group and another, I'm saying? So it's kind of like a revolving door, and it's not a party. Right? Because sometimes our neighbors have a party and, maybe 10, 15 people will come to their house. But generally, if you see that ongoing, it's not really the same people, or maybe you see, some people become regulars, you know what I'm saying? But you just see these different people coming and going. So you never really see who's inside the house except for the face of the house, male or female. They're very protective. They rarely let somebody in. And if you are like the superintendent or the caregiver of the property and they don't let you in for things, or they tell you you have to let them know when you're coming, that kind of stuff, that's a red flag there too. Because oftentimes what happens is there's multiple victims of trafficking within that residence, and they are being forced to engage in sexual activities with people who are purchasing them. And some of these people, young ladies, young boys, and just are doing it 14, 20 times a night, forcibly raped. I want you guys to hear that. Forcibly raped. Okay. This is against their will. Oftentimes they are kept drugged, sedated, literally, and people just come in and use them. And I don't want to be so graphic, but in these houses, sometimes they call them flap houses, sometimes they call them trap houses. They have just beds on the floor, just the bed mattresses, right? And the girl or the boy is assigned to that bed, and that person will come in who has just purchased them, engage in whatever sexual activity they want to, and then they're on their way. Now, where you might see one, and it's very rare, but where you might see one is if they are allowed to walk the streets, okay? So if they're out there working on the streets, be mindful of that too. If you see them coming back. And listen, you guys aren't that, if you live in council housing, your walls aren't that thick. You can hear the beatings. You can hear them being yelled at and told that they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And when you hear it, let me tell you something. Please don't choose to not get involved. Please pick up the phone, call your local police department and tell them what you're hearing and seeing, and ask them to do, we call it a welfare check. Ask them to do a welfare check on the home. You can say, I've heard screaming from over there. I just want to make sure that whoever was screaming is okay. All right. Now, depending on the country you're in, like in the US, when we get a call like that, we have to check it because it's a welfare check, a well-being check for someone within a home. And the law allows us to check the home because we have to go see if, in fact, there is someone in there who's harmed or maybe dead or whatever. So the law allows us to do it because we have the circumstances that warrant us going in to check the welfare. That's the only reason that the police would go in, is simply to check the welfare. They're not going in looking for drugs or looking for illegal weapons and all this kind of stuff. They want to look for the physical bodies within the home. Yet when they do that, they can literally look anywhere a physical body could be. And what I mean by that is, of course, if the trafficker says, oh, the cops are coming up the stairs because they have lookouts. Remember, I talked about the lookouts, right? The cops are coming up the stairs. They don't get a chance to let the children or let the girls, whoever they have trafficked in their house out. So they'll have them hide. They'll have them hide somewhere in the house. Well, because it was a welfare check, they've got to look for every possible voice that could have been screaming. And that could be in a closet. That can be in a crawl space. So by law, they can have access to that house to look for that missing possible victim, right? If they get everybody out, let's say the same thing happens. The guy, the lookout downstairs, whistles, does whatever to let them know that the cops are in the area, and they send everybody out, right? So let's say they, send the traffic people to another house, another place in the council house or whatever, right? Cops come, check it out, nothing there. Here's the thing. Don't be discouraged as a person who reported it, because they will now be paying attention to that house. Okay. So just because they went there, and it's going to be so important because of what you tell them when you call. Because when you tell them that you believe there's someone in that house that's being harmed, or that there might be multiple people in the house that may be being trafficked, then they're going to pay attention to that house. So they didn't get away with it, even though maybe that night they got the people out, or they hid well enough that the police couldn't find them, but they will be paying attention to that house. Another thing you see coming out of the house is a lot of trash. You see a lot of trash, and you may find in your area where you live at, you may find discarded condoms. And that's unfortunate, but that also means that people are engaging in sex acts around your neighborhood. And that may also be part of the trafficking ring, that the girls or the boys are out there servicing people. And of course, they're being safe, they're using the condoms, and the trafficker, the purchaser, doesn't care. He's just going to discard, he doesn't care, or she doesn't care. Because I say he or she, because the demand comes from both sides. There are male and females being trafficked, and there are male and female purchasers of the people who are being trafficked. So both are complicit in what is going on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tamia. Nadia says there is the estimated of 1,500 slaves in UK. That's an official number. In reality, probably there is more. But what I've realized on LinkedIn, there is so much going on LinkedIn, because I talk to everyone. I've got a big network on LinkedIn. So what I've realized is that there is many that have fancy profiles on LinkedIn. So you start talking to them, and when you start talking to them, they're like, can I add you on WhatsApp? So I'm like, you want to add me on WhatsApp, you have to tell me on what ground, how do we connect? So it's a business of pleasure. So they are like business. So I like, we can talk here. We don't have to go on WhatsApp. So we can talk here. So as the conversation goes by, a few months later, you start realizing, oh, I have a problem. I'm in this country. I have a problem. It starts being funny, like, oh, I've sent it. I've got, most of them, they are men. Like when you talk to them, they're in the US, in the army. They are from the US, but they're in a foreign country.
Yeah.
They're in the army, and they are widows.
Yes, yes.
Lost their wife through cancer.
Yes, yes.
I know it sounds horrible when
yes.
I laugh, but that's how it is. When somebody is telling you something that you don't believe, and
right.
Cancer is a very, very painful, but that does not give somebody an opportunity to take advantage of somebody. So it's always, I'm a single dad. I'm from the US, I'm in the army at the moment, I'm in this country, and then the conversation, and then later on they have problems financially. Can you help me? I'm like, no, but we connected here for business. So if things are not working, you must have a family that can help you, because obviously I'm a love harmonist. I know this is the game. That's what happens, and that's what happens. So for me, I would say anyone who is watching, if you're looking for love on the dating side, and then in that love ends up, you want to give somebody money. What does money got to do with the love?
Right.
You want to connect me with love? Let's connect. What does love got to do with money? If somebody start telling you, I have a problem, okay, if you have not met, so why are you telling that person? Because that is a dating side. And I've actually been doing some research. Basically, the scamming on the dating side is big. So that means there's actually the sex trafficking as well. They must be targeting them as well on the dating site as well.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So
yes.
people are aware of that. I met somebody, they live in Surrey, send me a message on saying, can you help me? I've lost thousands and thousands of pounds on a dating site. I meet women, and then you have a conversation, and then they want you to send them money. I'm like, why would you send somebody money you've never met? Come on. Money has got nothing to do with love. So I'm like, if you're connecting with somebody, why would somebody start telling you stories about what they are going through? They basically joined the agency to actually look for love. So what is love got to do with money? So if somebody is listening as well, those are the things that you can be aware of as well. And I watched another program as well. I'm doing a module in something. Hold on, I'm gonna go get the book.
Okay, so while you go get the book, I'll continue talking. So what she was mentioning there is so key. The fact that people will get on. There's multiple places that people will go to fish for Johns, to fish for victims. Okay, so these sex trafficking victims learn how to get sugar daddies that will pay for them. They learn how to be high-end call girls, and they are very classy. Some of them work out of some of the best hotels. Some of them are facilitated by concierges and things such as that. So these high-end girls, they're called, generally they call them call girls or something to that effect. Yet they are still being trafficked because they have a handler. You know, their handler might be a professional madam who actually is giving them a cut, but yet and still they are pretty much under that person, and someone else is making money off of their actions, which makes it trafficking. Okay, so maybe call something different where you are. Now, it is happening everywhere, right? We have high-end call girls. People know how to find them. There are some people who know to go on some of these dating sites because they know some keywords to say that will bring someone to them, will say, hey, you know, you think I'm beautiful, you've been writing on my site that I'm beautiful, $1,500 and you can have me for an hour. You know, so they're working it too, you know, but these people, for the most part, some of them start out being freelance, meaning they say, hey, one of their girlfriends says, hey, if you jump on there and you do this, and you can tell them that this is the money, blah, blah, blah. Before you know it, the traffickers get in. Sometimes they'll use the term pimp or panderer, right? And they will come in and they will say, you know what? You need protection. You don't have anybody watching your back. You're out here doing this. And before you know it, now they've been sucked in. Their freelance career that they thought they had control over has been taken over by a trafficker. And then the violence and the coercion and all of that comes in. So there's a whole lot. I mean, we're just here together for an hour, and we've literally only touched the tip of the iceberg in the discussion of sex trafficking and what it looks like and how you might encounter it. But I would want to encourage everybody that if you see someone that you perceive as a victim, and what let's say, for example, the girl on the street, if you get a chance to speak with her for whatever reason and realize the handler is going to move you on quickly, because if you're not talking to her about business, that handler will come out. You will see them. They will move you on. Okay. So this is why I don't want you to take a chance and go, oh, I see the girl. I could, take her and bring her to my house, or I could drive by with my car and take her. Don't do that, because these women and these children are money to them. And when you mess with their money, they will take your life. Trust me. And they won't think twice about it. So please do not put yourself in jeopardy. Just be a very good witness. And even if you want to get on the cell phone and go across the street and call your non-emergency police number and say, I'm really concerned about this young lady, or I'm really concerned about this boy that's out here, and I would really like it if a cop would just come by. And the same words you can use: check their welfare, make sure they're not a runaway, because a lot of these, just like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of these runaways who end up doing sex for survival end up getting snatched in and trafficked. So there's so many ways for people to end up being trafficked. And again, I haven't really even given you all that we could have talked about today, but I wanted to do this to whet your appetite to learn more, so that you can be your brother or sister's keeper, that you can help these children who are being sucked in and seduced into trafficking and help them get free. Because as we've mentioned, slavery is still alive and well throughout our world. People are being bought and sold. And don't even get me started on, usually in my class, because I do a lot of trainings, and I'll ask people, what is the worth of a child? What is the worth of a person? And we have a whole discussion about that. The lifetime of a person that's being trafficked, they can earn millions of dollars for their trafficker. Because as I mentioned, a lot of them are being used, 7 to 20 times in a night, for various forms of engagement. And if it's a child, they go for much higher price. And if you're a person that can look like a child, that goes for a high price too.
So it's $1 million industry
per person. It's $1 billion industry.
That's
it's
sick.
$1 billion. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So Tamia, because we are running out of time, is there a way out of this once someone is in, or is it addictive, or is there a way out? How do they get out?
There's a way out, and there's a whole lot of mental health care involved with it, because of the fact that oftentimes these victims have been so beaten down emotionally, physically. They become very attached to their traffickers. Oftentimes, even when the police make contact with them and they are arrested, like the prostitutes on the street, they get arrested, but they're so there's something over them, like we said, force, fraud, and coercion, so maybe they're holding the fact that they're going to expose them, or that they're going to go after their little sister. And if they don't end up continuing doing sex acts, or, there's always something that's held over this person's head. So the victim has to, because there's so many survivors, there are so many survivors, yet they have to make that decision to run. I have a very good friend who was a victim of trafficking in France. And every day she kept checking the doorknob, trying to run. She'd fight. She kept that fight attitude, even though she was beaten many times and all this kind of stuff. And finally, one day she prayed, she was praying. And the Lord, one day when she tried that knob, because think about how many times she probably tried that knob, like hundreds of times she tried that knob. One day she tried that knob and it opened, and she was half naked, but she opened that door and she ran and she ran and she ran and she ran, and she got her freedom. So you never know. And I would encourage you, if you're a praying person, please cover them in prayer. Cover our officers and our folks who are actually freedom fighters that are out there grabbing after and going and looking for these victims of trafficking, because what they're told is no one cares. The trafficker tells them no one cares. And if they move them to another country, they tell them if you run, the police are going to do this, this, and this to you because you're illegal. You've entered the country illegally. They're not going to care that you were trafficked. They're going to want to prosecute you for being in their country illegally, which is totally not true, because your country will help you as a victim. They will help you. US has it, UK has it. I believe you guys call them not refugees, asylum seekers, so they will help you. Okay.
There's always a help everywhere, Tamia. There's always a help.
Yes.
You're willing to get that help. So there's always a help. And sometimes I think people feel ashamed of it as well. But for me, what I always say, whatever is going on in your life, don't worry about what people are going to think. Just seek help. There's always someone out there that is going to help you. So is there a life after? Is there no more life, normality?
Oh, no, there's definitely life after. I've been really blessed to work with so many strong survivors who are actually advocates and go out and speak and help people do, like I just did, recognize when you see it and how you can help that person. So yeah, there is help. There is life. I mean, gooding life afterwards. I'm going to give you guys a name as a resource. Those that are listening to me, I want to encourage you to pull up a website. It's called Hookers. So HOOKERS, Hookers for Jesus, FORJESUS. Google it. The lady in charge of it
on the video when we finish, Tamia, please, as well, the link.
Oh yes, I will. The lady who runs its name is Annie Lobert, and Annie Lobert, I've been blessed to be able to be on her program, and I'll actually post that on the Nkosi Talk Show page today, so you guys can hear it and start listening to her podcast. She is a strong survivor, and she right now takes care of survivors who have gotten out of trafficking in her house called Destiny's House. And I've been blessed to visit the house and to get to know some of the women survivors that are there and interact with them. But mental health is really key for them, not just for the victims of trafficking that come out of it, but also for the traffickers that are brought out of it, because the traffickers are also groomed. Our pimps, our panderers, they're groomed from childhood. And don't get me started on the actual physical one-on-one peer recruiting. That would be a whole nother show. But literally in high school and on social media, teenagers are recruiting other teenagers to come into the game. It's called The Game is what they call it.
I'm actually doing a module, critical approach to counseling and forensic psychology. They're talking about it. That I've watched a video from, it was made by BBC, that they are grooming children from age of 10 with, they just give them money. It doesn't matter how much little money it is. When a child receives that money, they start grooming them. And then before you know it, they are involved into gang and trafficking and stuff. It's so painful, the things that we don't see that happens in the world. So Tamia, is there any other resources apart from that website where you can help the audience, the way they can find help? Or
I would also direct them to the Department of Homeland Security. They have a campaign called the color blue campaign. So go to the department, the US Department of Homeland Security, and they have a blue campaign. I would also direct you to Polaris, and Polaris has a whole lot of human trafficking information. It's P as in Paul, OLARIUS, I believe, Polaris, but I'll put it in it'll be in the chat after we finish. And then I would also invite you to go to a website called Free, that's FREE, International, Free International, spelled all the way out, .org. Plenty of resources for you there. I'm also going to be speaking for the Department of Homeland Security this Saturday So I will post that replay also when I will be speaking more, not even about what we talked about today, because I told you there's so many levels to human trafficking. I will be talking about another portion and talking to faith leaders on how to actually recognize it in their congregations. So those are some resources for our audience.
You're talking about what? Fake leaders?
Say again?
What are you going to be talking about?
Human trafficking to faith leaders, to people who are part of the clergy.
Sounds very interesting.
So I'll be talking to, well, actually I can post it because I do believe it's a Zoom link. So yeah, so I can post it. It's going to be 11 a.m. on Saturday, and it's not a closed meeting. I mean, you have to register to come in, so you can't just jump in, but yes, you would be able to attend it. It's designed for clergy people, service workers, people who engage with the community, so that they're able to recognize when they see a victim or a potential or possible victim of sex trafficking. And then also check my website out too, www.tamiadow.com, and you'll see quite a few resources there too.
Tamia, Nadia says amazing. Tamia, thank you, Nadia. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you. And thank you for those who are watching, Emily. And we appreciate you. So thank you so much, Tamia, for today. So what would you like to leave with our audience today?
What I want to encourage our audience is that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. We really are. And I would ask you to not, I don't want to be mean about this, but don't be so self-centered that you miss that person in need right next to you. You don't want to walk by a bleeding victim on the side just because it's not your business, because it is our business. You know, we have one purpose in life, and that really is to take care of ourselves and serve others. That really is what we were here. This world is supposed to be about love and concern and care for one another. And let's not sit in judgment on that person on the corner who we think is out there selling themselves willingly. Let's be a little more mindful about it, and let's help them, because it's people like you that could literally save a life just by picking up the phone and notifying the police of your concern. So please do so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tamia. It's been a very, very interesting topic. Hopefully you'll come back again and talk more about it, because I think for me as well, I like to hear more, because it's something that I read on the newspapers. I see the news. I've never really, I know that when children go missing, maybe they are going for trafficking and stuff. So it's something that we need to actually spread in our community, so that we are aware of what is going on in our community. I hope if you want to, you can come back again and we can do this topic again, going more deep as well.
Yeah, I would love to do the focus on children, because that could be a whole episode in and of itself. Yes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So for those who are watching Nkositalkshows, we are here Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. And we talk about different topics. Even sometimes the audience, if you have a topic that you would like us to talk about, you can send us a message on the page or email us. We'll cover that topic, because sometimes people have problems and they don't know how to deal with it. So if you give us a topic, we'll talk about that topic. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. Be blessed, be safe.
Hold on. Thank you so much, Tamia. It's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, it gets deep.
Welcome to Nkositalkshows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled with it.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
Lead from within, everyone, and find your own